Yes, as I was saying before, I don't know if you guys ever had an issue where you applied to a job, you come into a new job and you found it wasn't quite as advertised. Always kind of surprised to come into something. The next slide, we were talking about where we're going to go with it. I don't know what kind of things you've ever seen. I know Jenny and I talked about this, and because we work in this field, it's kind of an interesting and different field in marketing. There are a lot of things that come up that we see, and I think a lot of people have experienced these. I feel like I've talked to people in different areas. You come into a job and it's not exactly the role or job description you had is not exactly accurate, your role or your responsibilities. Maybe the company culture isn't exactly what you were sold on. You were told it was cool, your Google and all your ping pong tables and your party, but you're working 70 hours a week and you're never going to do anything but leave your desk. When you have misleading information that could lead to distrust when you start the role and you start questioning really what's going on there. Or it could lead the applicant to tire or tarnish the company's reputation because they're unhappy in their role. They are going to start, I'm sorry, I swear, I'm not going to try not to, but they start talking shit. They start getting negative. They get on Glassdoor and those review sites. And if you ever done any research on jobs, there's a lot of places to look up more information on company besides the company website nowadays. So that can be a big problem for you, especially when it comes to managing your reputation. I'm going to expect that you're not the only ones that have seen that.
Yeah, no, I agree, Heather. And I think that that's the biggest hurdle that we have, especially, as we think about how talent marketing interfaces with general marketing and brand recognition and reputation. This can really help make or break a brand, particularly on these review sites, and just how people have everything at their fingertips now to be able to share information and advocate for one another and what's going on, what their personal experience has been. So here's why it matters. These are some really interesting statistics just from different areas and different perspectives, but the cost of a bad hire. So being, interestingly, talent marketing kind of straddles the line between HR and brand marketing, right? So we kind of live in both worlds, but 15% of human resources on average are allocated towards recruitment efforts, which is a pretty significant portion of that. If we think about all of human capital management, 30% of an employee's first year earnings. So if you had a bad hire, you just lost that percentage of money. And now you've got to go back out there, reinvest, try to figure out where you go. You've got a loss of time and actually management of the workload, all of those things. Another issue is 60% of bad hires will negatively impact the performance of other team members. So you make a bad hire, now you're causing a whole bunch of other people to be disgruntled, leaving the organization. Now you have this times tenfold of trying to kind of rebuild the culture within your team, depending on where this person is in the organization. And, as you scale up, and especially when you get into leadership rankings, you can get up to about over 300% of the annual salary could be lost in hiring costs. And that comes from people making mistakes from a financial standpoint. It comes from the investment you have to make in recruitment firms and headhunting and trying to get these people reattracted. And then obviously from a reputational hit standpoint, all of that can be driven right back down to that bottom line, which is really significant, especially in a market right now where everybody on this call, you guys, you're in the driver's seat when it comes to talent attraction. So you get to call the shots. and these stats are why. So
also why our roles specifically exist at our companies. Recruitment marketing has become a thing, and it was quite niche for a while, but it's really been gaining a lot of traction everywhere. We know marketing. We both did not come from originally from typical marketing roles, but we found ourselves in this role because hiring and really attracting talent and handling these things is huge. And hopping to our overview and takeaways, we did list this as talking about the war on talent and how to really bring our paid and owned media strategies together with organic and earned. But really talking about overall, what we're really trying to talk about is how this really relates to what you do as a marketer every single day. Because what we do is just a slight twist on what you're already doing, but there are a few other things to think about and bringing into your larger marketing strategy. And it's something that if you don't have, depending on the kind of organization you're in, you might have the opportunity to still bring this in and think about this as part of your overall strategy. Maybe you don't need a separate team like we have, but something that's really important to think about moving forward with everything you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to that same point, Heather, there's a lot of the same paid, earned, owned mechanisms that we use every day, but just there's like a slight tweak to how we do it here. And if you think about things like programmatic advertising, it's not so much about trying to get people to purchase as you want them to click through and apply to a role. And so there's just those slight tweaks, but it's a lot of the same fundamental mechanisms. And then obviously at the end of the day, we're all here to tell a story. So, we'll hear more about Heather and I's background next, but the power of being able to tell that story and have that skill set is invaluable in this space too, because again, while we're straddling the line of human resources and marketing, we're also straddling that line of being company evangelists and advocates for trying to get people to relate back to these companies and giving them the why they would want to consider working here. So next is Heather's introduction. So Miss Heather, go ahead.
Lovely photo. Well, my name is Heather Holm. I'm the digital programs manager at General Motors for the talent attraction and marketing team. You can go to the next slide. We threw some quick about me's and us in there, but I've been at GM for a little over 2.5 years now. COVID, time flies, when COVID happens. I started only 6 months. I was actually in the office and I've been virtual ever since. Our entire talent acquisition team, which the talent marketing team sits within, is actually now completely remote. Even though I live here in the area, I don't have to drive downtown every day. And you know what? I don't miss it because traffic is not fun going down to the run center every day. So I could just roll up, get up and just hop into my office and work every day. But I'm native to Southeast Michigan. I've never left. Don't ask me how that happened. I went to grad school. I got my bachelor's, I got my master's, and I've always been here. I went to OU and Wayne State. I started actually here at GM as the talent website lead, or the website manager for careers, and came into the talent marketing team. I kind of moved into more of the MarTech side of it when it came to HR technologies and our MarTech stack. I have moved into becoming the digital programs leader. So I own all careers channels, the careers website. We have some careers social specific channels, CRM, and we also have some branded sponsored platforms. And when I say that, I'm talking like Glassdoor. We even share content. You even share content on Indeed or in LinkedIn. Obviously, that's huge for all of us. That's huge for everybody, and probably the best place you'll find a job in the future, FYI, if you're looking for a job. My previous experience, actually, I've been all over the place since I've been here in Southeast Michigan. I came from working in manufacturing and engineering on the non-automotive side previously, but I've also worked in healthcare, nonprofit, real estate. I've worked as an independent consultant. I've been in quite a few industries, so I have brought a lot of knowledge together. And in the past 2 years, I've really got into the recruitment marketing area. It's, like I said, kind of niche, but it's been a really interesting place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, over to me. So Jenny Ecclestone, as previously mentioned, I'm the director of talent attraction and recruitment marketing. A bit about me. So I actually just recently joined Magna. I used to work with Heather at General Motors. So I started off my career in communications, and I was in that space for about 11 years, doing everything from manufacturing communications to crisis to branding, managing a global team for the GMC brand. And I actually worked in one of our facilities down in Texas. I helped a couple of regional teams in Atlanta, Texas, and then also the Midwest. So kind of went all over the place with GM. And then the last 3.5 years, I've really been in recruitment marketing. So I started my tenure in this space because I actually had a lot of passion. And prior to GM bringing in a centralized recruitment function, it was done based on the different functional areas. And I had managed our recruitment program for the interns for a long time. And then when they were starting to build this team out, I got tapped on the shoulder during a larger GM transformation where my job was getting eliminated in communications, had the opportunity to kind of transfer these skills over, and found a new love for something that I was very passionate about, which is career development and helping people to grow professionally. And then using the skills that I had from a communications and marketing standpoint to kind of transfer into this space. So similar to Heather, this was definitely not the journey I thought my career was going to take, but I'm very happy to have found this. And I think we both call ourselves lucky that all of a sudden we have this giant crisis for talent, and we're now some of the most important people in marketing, which is really cool.
We call it job security.
Yeah, exactly. So if you couldn't tell, I'm definitely, I like to share my personality a little bit. So I'm an ESFP, if people are familiar with the Myers-Briggs category, but I'm a performer. I'm a 2-time Spartan. So I finished my undergrad there in communications and PR back in the early 2000s. And then I recently, just last year, got my master's in science and management strategy and leadership through the Eli Grove Business School there. And then on the personal side, I have 2 dogs and I'm a bonus mom. You can see my Hubs, and that's me on my grad school graduation there on the left. And then my lovely stepkids, they're also both Spartans. So I won the battle because my husband went to Western and then actually was a U of M fan. So I'm the winner in the house right now. And then you can see my two loves of my life, my two dogs. So Sullivan and Duskus is in the suit. And then I'm an avid traveler, love Peloton. And for me, my aspiration beyond just being a professional and in this space is to help make a positive impact on others. So I think that's helpful for you guys to know a little bit about us. And now we're going to dive back into the rest of the presentation.
Yes.
So employer versus corporate brand. We've talked about this a couple of times, but there's a lot of similarities and then there's also some differences, right? So on the employer brand side, it's really about the company's reputation and popularity from a potential employee's perspective. And it describes our company values and why we would want what we want our employees to feel and have an experience here. I think a lot of people on this call are probably a lot more familiar with the side of the corporate brand, which is the practice of promoting a brand for a corporate entity as opposed to in specific products and services, right? So like if we think about the audience segments that a corporate brand has, you have your investors, you've got your actual consumers, you may have B2B situations, and then you have your employee audience where ours is kind of outside of those walls because we're just strictly talking about potential employees. However, those people could all be potential employees. And I know, in our time at GM, that was something we talked about all the time, is that you are not just representing the job and the candidate experience, but if they have a good or a bad experience with us as a recruitment opportunity, if they are in the market to buy a car or they're interested in something like that, we're also making that decision for them then too. And so it's hitting your bottom line no matter what. Yeah. So Heather, I don't want to take over the whole thing. So
I always refer to brand as employer brand more as the what's in it for me. Yep. And that's really and if you put yourself in the position, whether you're looking for a job now or you will be in the future, we all will be at some point in our career still, it's the what's in it for me. And it really is a different positioning from your corporate brand. And it's something to think about. Some companies have an employer brand that kind of layers in with their corporate brand. Some just kind of loop it in together. I know we have Everybody In, which wasn't exactly our corporate brand, but it's very all encompassing right now. We're actually GM's in the process of working on rebuilding our EVP and our entire employer value proposition, employer brand. And a lot of times, like as Jenny said, it's kind of what's in it for me with what the company offers, showing big things, benefits, what are you going to get out of it? What are career development, progression, and growth? But being able to show those pieces and how to actually bring those in. And there are sometimes those are the things, it's always about bringing those pieces together. Is what I guess I'm trying to say without jumbling my words. It's been a long day already for me with meetings. But that really comes down to just the what's in it for me. How do you bring those out there? If it's not something being demonstrated, even if it's just a careers page within your company website, hitting high level benefits, you don't even have to talk about time off. You don't have to talk about any other maybe cool bonuses you might get, but just giving them kind of that taste of what it's like, even just employee storytelling, just a little bit to show what life is like, that authentic view, transparent view versus here's the job description, hire it and take this interview.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's a good point, Heather. And we talked about that kind of at the top of the presentation, but that authenticity piece. And we know that in general, anyways, from a branding standpoint overall, but it's really critically important because we're not selling a product where you can just say, okay, that didn't work out for me. Next time I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. We're selling people's professional lives, which is tied to their ability to, feed and house their families. It's tied to enabling them to do other things with what they want professionally and personally. And so I think that's where it's got to come from the what's in it for me perspective, because it's not just this transaction that you're going after for, okay, we just got them to buy another coffee or we got them to buy a vehicle. We are actively asking you to decide how you want to spend 80% of your week every day. And is that aligned with what our values are, right? So it's a really big proposition. And I think that's where, when we think about too, like the journey map that you would have for a consumer brand or a corporate brand, okay, what's the journey we want to go on? If we have those key audiences with investors and all of that, there's pretty clear direction on what the information is they need to be able to make decisions. When it comes to our talent audiences, if you're a student versus somebody that's more experienced versus an executive versus someone who's more technically minded, or if you're on a skilled trade and production workers, all of these personalities have very different wants and needs. So it's how do you also amalgamate that together in these spaces to help target and reach those on their individual journeys. So lots to consider. So there's lots of ways that we have, though, to leverage and promote employer brand.
Yes. And from those, those obviously we spoke a lot to employer brand already, but we talk heavy into nothing that should be a surprise to anyone on this call: content creation, whether it's social graphics. And I don't know if you're seeing a lot more on LinkedIn lately. I've been seeing tons coming from companies like, I just got hired, or they've when they're starting a new position. Just putting those little pieces out there, those little exciting moments to help people get excited about, joining your company or your organization. So whether it's just social posts, call to action, employee stories, proactive engaging, especially your early career. I know we at our companies are big on early career talent, because internships, entry-level jobs, that's the future of work and the future of the organization. So companies do focus a lot on that. So making sure you're engaging with some intern programs and really bringing some interesting pieces into those programs. Any sort of special events you're showing up at, whether it's whether you're at trade shows, if you're in B2B, or you're showing up at like diversity events. We do a lot of big events with that are student or organizational, similar to AMA, but like NSBE, for example, which is why am I blanking out?
National Society of Black Engineers.
Thank you. Yeah, and a few of other organizations like that, where you might be reaching out to people, bringing that an element into place, because I don't know how many, even prior to coming to GM trade shows, I used to work on when I was on the B2B side, where people came up just asking me for jobs. What are you hiring for? What are you doing? And we were not prepared for it, because we didn't do that. And it was a lesson learned when I came over here. But having a way to bring those out there and bring even just a little bit of information on that, and being proactive about getting out there to reach out to people about opportunities. What's life like at the company? Why you should join us, even if we don't have a job right now. You should keep us in mind in the future, because you seem awesome and we'd love to have you.
Yep, absolutely. And then I think that, again, and we talk about this again and again, but again, that comes back to the authenticity piece, right? Where you're showing up at these events because you want people to see themselves fitting in these places. So, where your ERGs, and if no one understands that reference, employee resource groups, I think that's a pretty well-known terminology now, but those can be your biggest advocates, because if you're trying to build a diverse workforce, you want to make sure that people know that they would fit in well, because that's one of the biggest challenges, right? If people only think that there is one demographic or one opinion matters in these organizations, and that's all they see in the marketing collateral, then they're going to feel like they don't fit in here, and that they don't actually want to take that risk and take that move. Whereas if you are showing up at these events and you've got like-minded people and people who look like them, to be honest, that's where you want to get that assimilation, and they see people being successful and winning awards and being able to do great things, then it makes it a lot more attainable in their mind that this could also be something for me too.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yes. So our favorite channels in marketing, own, paid, and earned.
So we wanted to make sure we touch on this. As noted, I feel like we're not showing anything new. It's just how we pivot and how we utilize. But when it comes to our major facets of influence and talent attraction and marketing, we looked at your own channels, your organic content, website, any engagements you're getting on social, et cetera. When we're looking at paid, we look at a lot of targeted campaigns and messaging. So we have someone on my team that is her world, and she is an expert. She literally lives in LinkedIn, and she targets sponsored posts and ads down to the skill set, not just the job title, but skill sets, where geo targeting, where people are located. We're doing a lot of hiring at GM for tech. I'm sure you've seen we're building a few electric cars, just a few. And so we have a lot of technology and high-tech talent we're trying to hire. And a lot of those people tend to reside in Silicon Valley and want to go work for the Googles or the Amazons of the world. So showing the cool things we are doing and the opportunities you have to build this really cool new technology coming in place, we have to hit people where they are. And it's about finding the people where they are, locating them on the channels they're on, whether you're looking at people, more skilled professionals or salaried folks like marketers, for example. We tend to find more skill sets like that on LinkedIn, for example, where I also do a lot of hiring in our plants and our production plants to build vehicles. That more blue collar workforce, I can tell you, they reside more on Facebook. They tend to do a lot more word of mouth. So how to get those messaging out there, it's really, whether it's paid or organic, there's so many different places we can go with it. But when it comes to targeting, we really are honing on skill sets. It's always a great recommendation if you're doing any sort of job advertising or trying to help fill some jobs. You can always aim for overall awareness of the company, but specific jobs and skill sets are a big way to go if you're really trying to focus on certain kinds of hiring in your organization, and your group happens to be tasked with it, as tends to happen. Especially, I came from a lot of smaller marketing teams. You get tasked with everything. You do it all for everybody. It's a great focus, and I know LinkedIn, Indeed, et cetera, they have a lot of different ways you can hone in on that. I will say, throwing it out there, as I'm thinking of things that might be useful for anyone who might have to be pulled into this kind of work. Google is not the strongest area to focus on. So Google Ads, et cetera, is worth a try. I'm actually piloting it in Ireland right now. It might be a little better there because they're a smaller market, but Google tends to not be the strongest place to advertise. It's hitting people where they are. Social content platforms like that, like I said, Glassdoor, et cetera, that's where to go. We also do some programmatic where we'll do some, you'll do a little bit of a, specific targeting through there, but also featuring jobs and even through events, just paying to be at event, just paying to be part of events or showing up at events, even if it's just a table, getting out there and talking to people makes a big difference. And of course you hit your earned places, your PR and news coverage, which you're lucky if you get it, depending on what it is. A lot of times it's more big company stories versus, something specific to hiring or opportunities to work. But although in this talent market, you tend to see a lot more coming out lately about opportunities to hire or big things going on with this company or that company, and et cetera.
Yeah, no, I think that's all fair. And I think, when we think about the ways these interact, and I think Heather brings up a really great point as far as like Google and SEO, to me, where the line is like the balance between the two. And I think she's 100% spot on when it comes to targeting people because of the different journeys that they would be on from a skill set standpoint or background. They're going to be going to different mechanisms. They're going to be, professionals are far more frequently on LinkedIn, and we see Indeed as kind of the catch-all for everybody. But then there's tools like Handshake for in the US for university students, where students basically have built trust, or Handshake, the tool, has built trust within the university space to say, like, we are now your go-to resource, students, for any roles. And basically for students, and because both my stepkids are in college, I know this for a fact, like, if the jobs are not on LinkedIn or they're not on Handshake, the jobs don't exist. The next generation is not going to your career site, no matter how beautiful and how much time and whatever you invest into that. If they're not seeing these jobs and these tools that exist, it's changing the entire way that people are actually going and being motivated. So where SEO, Google targeting helps is from that broader like employer branding campaign versus doing things at an individualized job level. But then that's where you have these featured jobs and layering that in with the broader employer brand message, and then getting into the programmatic feed where you're now basing it on that individual person and meeting them where they are, right? Like, I talk about a certain brand of shoes, all of a sudden I'm getting Instagram, information from there. That's a programmatic ad spend. So we're trying to do now that with jobs on different platforms to say, like, okay, if you're on Indeed or if you're on these other platforms looking, I'm going to start layering in these different programmatic advertising because I know this is where you're going to seek jobs. And so I want to go there and get those clicks. I want you to apply. I want you to do all that stuff. So again, same tools that we use for every kind of branding, but it's just that slight tweak of how those things layer on together.
Yes, absolutely.
So I don't think this is auto playing.
We're going to hope this will work. Yes, so we did throw some brand videos out there of what we're working on right now for you as well to see kind of where we're at.
I don't know if this is going to work.
Well, I hope so. I tested yesterday for you guys so we could show you some cool videos.
I know. Let's see. Let me try mine.
Okay.
I don't know if this one will play.
If we can't, we can share later on.
We can share it afterwards. Yeah, we're happy to share the presentation and everybody can enjoy.
Sadly, we had some cool branding to show you, but
we did, but we can share that afterwards. Okay, so yeah, building employee advocacy. This is definitely one that's near and dear to my heart, coming from the communication space and appreciating that employees can be your biggest advocate, right? So when you think about us being in a space where we are actively trying to garner interest from external talent. An interesting fun fact that I just actually came across in the last couple of weeks doing research on myself, or not myself, doing research for my team right now, is that a survey from Gartner, which is one of the broader HR research tools that exists, but of the responses that they got, and this was a big survey that had like 15,000 people participating in it from a various array of demographics and skills and experience, the leading response for them was a channel of influence for people was friends and family when it came to who they were choosing as an employer of choice. So this is where, because our space is so new and because talent marketing is not exactly well known, the trust is still with friends and family. And I think people know, people are very prideful of where they work for. So you want that acknowledgement and that recognition that GM is a good company, that Magna is a good company. When I had the opportunity come up, what was kind of hilarious is that people within Southeastern Michigan knew Magna because it's a huge presence here and it's one of the top suppliers for the automotive companies. So, and my friends in Canada, because Magna's a Canadian company, were like, holy shit, like this is a huge deal. And then people who I was talking to outside of the automotive network had no idea who we were. And they're like, am I happy for you? I don't know. And that's exactly why this matters, because people want that pride in where they're working. So if that recognition and that understanding is not there, you're not going to make the win. You're not going to get the talent into your company. So our employee basis, everybody that's working on your teams right now, those are your best army of advocates to be able to push out there. So creating an employee ambassador program and using your ERGs to be able to push this messages and to share that stuff in their own space. Again, it builds on the authenticity. They can share their personal stories so that it's in relation to what they're sharing and experiencing. We've had some really successful stories where people who have gotten recognized either internally have shared that publicly, and the amount of recognition that gets too, to see someone in your network being successful and being acknowledged for that success can go really long way. That shows that the brand cares about them. And it enables that idea again to say, well, that could be me someday. We also see really great opportunities with employee storytelling. So as Heather mentioned, and we're both in this situation where, and we're definitely not alone, everyone is looking for software tech talent. When for a lot of people coming from Silicon Valley or a lot of those companies, they don't necessarily understand the type of work. And in their head, we're all old manufacturing companies. And they're like, well, I don't want to work in a manufacturing facility. I don't want to do that. And it's like, that's not even close to what you would be doing. You're helping to create vehicles and technology of the future and autonomous vehicles, electrification and systems and processes, and truly, literally developing the future of things, not working in a manufacturing plant, which we have lots of jobs for that too. Don't get me wrong, but it's all about how you tell that story and sharing with them. This is what your day-to-day job could really look like and humanizing that work. And like I mentioned earlier, the employee resource groups, depending on how many you have, we actually just launched a couple at Magna too, but that's where you can really use them to help authentically connect with the DEI audiences. And I remember a really good example actually during my time at GM was we had our GM Asian Connections group, and within that community, obviously family is like number one in Asian communities. And so to be able to help inform all of our Asian employees who are participating in there with the roles and opportunities we had to be able to extend that to their network was a huge win for us, because there's a lot of trust built. And as we've just mentioned, in general, family and friends happen to be the source of influence. So if you can get and tap into those networks and give them that information, then you're really, really going to help yourself be more successful.
Absolutely. We'll hit the next slide.
Just a couple more slides here, guys, and we'll open it up for questions.
Yes, and we can hit the external side because we know, Jenny, I think as I read the slides, I was like, how naturally this falls into both of our backgrounds, because I'm more the external side.
Yes.
When it comes to channel management, things like that, and building employee advocacy, again, you want to show up where they are. And it's just like anything else marketing. You want to go where you're going to find the people, where you're going to make the sale, where you're going to find the individuals that want to be there, and where you're going to attract and get the most bang for your buck at the end of the day. Organically, your website, your company website is always going to be the win. If you have a careers page, or depending on the size of your organization, within your company website or a careers site, always going to be a win to make sure you're building that advocacy. You're showing, again, who we are, what we do, what's in it for you. Social, both company owned or employee led. Like I said, I know for me, we have a few career specific pages. We have like a LinkedIn careers group, and we do have like a LinkedIn GM careers Facebook, but everything else we do is in partnership with our communications team. And we work in very close partnership to share any stories out, and anything that's out there is huge for us. It's paramount because GM understandably has a decent size following, but having a little careers page versus on LinkedIn versus the entire GM page, like that's where I'm going to hit people. And that's where I want to talk to people about who we are and what we do, and bring some transparency to our culture, what we care about, where our values are, and our commitments to the people. So social, obviously always going to be good. In our job descriptions, that one I threw in there because that's important. There's so many people out, and a lot of times it's HR doing your job, you're writing up jobs. And I have come across so many weird job descriptions, even in marketing. I'm like, is this real? Because you're writing out a job that is literally an entire team. This is not one person. You're like, this is not real. No one can do all this work. Let's be honest here. But finding a way to bring that in there, like good job explanations if you're hiring like a marketing specialist. What does it look like? And what's in it for them? Who we are, give a brief overview of who we are, what we do, maybe a little bit of information on benefits, a little bit about your culture. Bringing some of those elements and that's into those stories and those job descriptions makes a difference, because that's kind of what helps attract you at the end of the day. You can read a job at any big or small company, I don't care where you're at, but a lot of times that's what it gets people in, is putting it where they're going to find the information. And of course, our earned media. And then from a paid standpoint, again, like I said, I'm really deep into this, but strategic promotion on major platforms. So obviously we mentioned Indeed and LinkedIn and wherever you probably look for jobs. But there are other areas if you're trying to target other people and doing even just sponsored content and stories on other platforms and job communities, Glassdoor, Facebook. Have you ever heard of the Muse? I know I was familiar with it before. It's more of a female specific platform. It's like a professional community where you can looking for professional development advice, talk to other people, just kind of building your own professional network, kind of in a different way, from kind of a different version of LinkedIn, but a little more targeted. But also there are jobs out there and you can actually view company profiles and information catered to you. And those type things are very helpful when you're trying, because again, that's where I'm going to go find jobs or want to find career advice when I want to take my next step. Built in is another one, as I did note on here, that's more of a tech community. It's a little bit newer to outside of like, I guess big tech hubs like Austin, Texas, or Silicon Valley. But yeah. There are other like more targeted areas out there where if you can put sponsored or even organic content and storytelling out there, it's amazing what you can do and who you can reach, and actually being able to bring that authenticity and that transparency into who we are, what we do, and what opportunities are available to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so bringing it all together, I think there's a couple of key things that we've continued to bring up, which is you want to have that unique employer brand, and that would include the things that Heather was mentioning earlier, right? You want to have, what are the benefits? What's in it for me? So is that salary? Is that related to vacation time? Do you have a really cool culture or environment that people can work in? Are you really focused on creating that flexibility and enabling remote work? But it should be something that both represents who your culture is internally, that you can actually deliver on that promise that you're selling, and then somehow dotted line back to the larger persona of the company. So like, for instance, Magna's main branding is forward for all. So when we think about like moving everybody forward, that's everything. That's with mobility, that's with the products that we're creating for our customers. And then when we think about the employer value proposition, ours is dream big and imagine the future with us, right? So it's taking the idea of forward for all and this momentum we're creating in the marketplace, but it's turning it back to the potential employee and saying, what's in it for me? You have the opportunity to dream big and imagine what is possible here and deliver on this promise to move everybody forward. So it's like that unique little twist that you're taking on the branding standpoint to deliver on that broader promise from a brand.
And actually, I really wish I could say what our new one is, because
I know it's a secret still.
It's a secret because our call to action is everybody in. Our mission is zero crashes, zero emissions, zero congestion. But our call to action is everybody in. And underneath that, I do have a new employer value proposition coming. Our old one was made for more. You're made for more here. I can't tell you my new one. I would love to, but it's more to come.
It's coming. So then identifying those internal brand champions and advocates that can really help amplify the voice, right? We know paid targeting, everything you do on the paid side is immensely helpful. You can tie direct connection back to your bottom line, to seeing the, the hiring rates, what was the click-through rates, how do we engage? But there's really nothing better than that third-party advocacy, whether that comes in the form of awards from other divisions or Forbes or larger talent organizations, to then your own person and family members speaking up and saying like, hey, this is why my company means so much to me. Here's the opportunities we have. I can't say enough good things about why you'd want to come work here. And then representation matters, but authenticity is the key. So, and why this is so important is, I think, again, as we think about the conversion of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, which a lot of people don't talk about still, it's that authenticity. So we can say all day long, we both work for organizations that want and value DEI. There's no question that that's the case. However, if then we are bringing in employees of diverse backgrounds and they don't feel like they fit in here, then we're not making that authentic connection and we're not delivering on that promise. So a lot of that is where us being aligned within HR and that team is really helpful to understand, okay, like how honest are we being with ourselves about the promise we're delivering to people, and what authentically can we say, yes, this is true. We know that there's a space for you here. We know why this matters, all of those things. So just, in anything you do, authenticity matters, but particularly when it comes to this. And again, that's simply because of the nature of what we're selling.
Yes, absolutely. But that's pretty much all we have. Thank you. Well said, Jenny. We kind of left it at that and wanted to keep it a little open-ended because we do work in an interesting field. And I think if you're looking to do any of this kind of work, we figured we could open it up, that we can throw anything out there. If you have any questions, if you're looking to start adopting some of these practices into your marketing strategies as you're moving forward.
Alrighty, excellent. Well, thank you guys. Feel free to send questions into the chat, and then we can ask Jenny and Heather as those come in. I think we got one here. All right, so someone asked, have you set up a lead capture form on your career website? So for instance, if someone visits but does not necessarily want to complete an application, but may just be browsing or looking in the future, have you set up a form where they can enter info and get, say, automated new job alerts, or do you recommend setting up something like that on career pages?
Absolutely.
This has been Heather's life.
World. How do you capture leads and how do you keep people engaged if they don't want to actually apply to a job? Because it happens a lot. Talent communities. So depending on how you set things up, setting up a form so they could follow up, so you can start doing like email and audit. You can start doing drip campaigns to them or email marketing just to keep people that are prospects warm. We're actually integrating a CRM right now. We're in process of working on it. I do have a talent community. If you went to careers.gm.com, up in the corner of my navigation says join our talent community. If you don't find a job, you go sign up. You can submit your resume, your basic information, your area of interest, and you will start. We're in some process. It's not there yet, but I'd rather be honest. Again, authenticity. We're getting there with our roadmap, but to put those pieces in place so that you can submit a resume and what you're interested in, and just have it out there. That's always really great to get some lead capture. And again, it's really no different. We're calling it lead capture here, and I'm glad you speak my language. It's so much easier to talk to other marketers because I always call it lead capture. When I talk to HR people, they're like, "You mean candidate journey?" I'm like, "Yes, it's the same thing.
That's what I mean.
It's the same thing." But yes, it's critical because that's a great way to keep people engaged and to try to engage people in the future. Because maybe you find someone who didn't have a job now, but in the long run, maybe there's a great opportunity, or to get them into your funnel in the future that maybe they might become a potential candidate or maybe a customer in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. We have another one from Nicholas. Any suggestions for smaller entities, part of large entities, on how to organically improve the employer brand?
Sure. So I'll take this one because it sounds like it might be a structure similar to Magna. So Magna is weird in the fact that we are one global company and we're 156,000 employees and 350 plus facilities. So like we're giant, but we're that company that nobody knows about basically. And within Magna, we have 7 different divisional units. And up until last year, they all kind of operated underneath their own purviews. So we had Cosmo, seating, powertrain, electronics. And as you can tell by some of those names, it kind of makes sense. Who knows what Cosma meant and what that actually does? So I think for us, where we saw the value was, let's invest in this much higher level Magna EVP. However, in the communities where a lot of these facilities are, particularly for like the production and skilled trades workers, you know, and Cosma is a great example because within there, depending on the actual product we were producing, they had different subnames. So they had Camtech and DecoStar and all of these places. And it's just like, there's no direct connection to Magna, but in that community, they are known. So what we've we're still getting everybody along on this journey to get to the point where everyone's referencing themselves as Magna all the time. But what we've kind of created is an opportunity where DecoStar, comma, a subsidiary of Magna or a part of Magna International, to kind of reinforce that connection point, because we want to allow that natural connection in the community in which those facilities exist, in which those teams exist. And there's that recognition already there. We don't want to take away from that, but we do need to start bridging that gap for them because they are part of Magna International. And ultimately, if we're going to build a robust employer brand, everybody kind of needs to move towards that journey. But there are still ways that you can honor and, you know, share that they're part of that entity, but that you're part of this much larger organization too.
Gotcha. I have a question. I've talked to friends who are, you know, looking for new gigs or at least open to the opportunity of looking for new gigs. And I think you hit on it a little bit, but during the presentation, especially like that first question where you have people setting up like alerts, like, oh, they're looking for jobs and so on. Do you have like specific things that you do for that person who like isn't, if you're looking at a funnel that, you know, isn't there yet, but like in the future they may be looking for something new? So I just personally feel like in my network of friends, there's a lot of people who are like, I'm at a point where I'm looking for a change and maybe my current employer isn't going to do that. I don't want to leave yet. I'm not putting my resume out there. I'm not doing anything yet, but like maybe if the right opportunity came to me right now, I'd be, you know, open to it. Like that halfway point, if that makes sense.
Yep. So
Yeah.
I'll say, I'll use a personal experience more recently because I was kind of in that situation. I felt like I wasn't going to have the opportunity I wanted to grow as a leader within the organization. The way we were structured, it just wasn't going to happen. And that's totally fine. That happens a lot, especially in this space, because it's a newer and burgeoning type of marketing, right? And so my key to success is go onto your LinkedIn profile, and there's a way to say, I'm open to being contacted by recruiters. And recruiters are waiting for that stuff to go live, and you will immediately be contacted about different opportunities. Make sure your profile is updated so that when they do searches, they can find you. But that's really the key that I would advocate for you for, so that you can start to see what opportunities are out there. And when I had flipped that on, it was like 6 months before I landed where I wanted to be, but it was already, I was feeling that kind of pull internally of, okay, I feel like I'm hitting the ceiling here of what I want to do. And I'm looking for that next opportunity. And like I said, like I was on a journey then for a while, deciding between the opportunities and looking for just the right fit. And then this came along and it was a perfect fit for me. So that's your way of, you don't have to be like hustling out there and putting your name into situations if you're not comfortable with that yet, but you can start to have recruiters contact you directly and say like, yes, I'm interested in this, or no, I'm not.
And also with that feature, when you activate it on LinkedIn, you can set it so your company doesn't see it. I'm not trying to betray
and even
my
our
Jenny's, but if that's out there, you can put that you're open, but it won't put, because if you put publicly, it'll put a little like banner on your photo, but you can do it privately so your company doesn't see it.
Yes.
So that's a great thing to do.
Yeah, even the recruiters in your company will not be able to see it. So anybody won't. So
HR,
you would be safe from that perspective.
So it's private. The other thing to think about though too is it goes back to setting up a lead capture form. Is if you have an organization you have some interest in, you join their talent community, you can start getting touch points depending on what kind of technology and systems they utilize. Some people you can set up to start getting job alerts on jobs that might be related to what you're looking for. And that's also super passive, that you'll just get them in your inbox. If there's a specific company you're looking at, that's also another opportunity as well.
Another question I have, like I was saying earlier, that because of COVID, things have changed a lot for companies. It's interesting sometimes to hear friends talk about companies that 3-4 years ago you wouldn't have had the opportunity to work for, whether it be location or something like that. And because of COVID, people working virtually, that's opened things up a little bit. From a recruiting standpoint or from a talent attraction standpoint, is there something that you've seen become close to or maybe common practice that wasn't around pre-2020 that maybe you see sticking around now that we've experienced it or have kind of gone through it?
Hybrid and remote work.
Yeah, remote work is number one. And I unfortunately can't brag about the fact that we have a lot of remote work opportunities because that's not currently in our culture here. We have a hybrid situation. And since many of our workers, and I would say the broad majority of them actually work in manufacturing facilities and those plants, it's really hard for us to get to that point.
Yeah.
But we try to enable flexibility. I think, what's interesting, we don't talk about it enough, is how interviewing has dramatically changed, right? Because prior to COVID, there was such an emphasis on in-person interviewing. It was the handshake, it was the whole nine. Pretty much, I know at GM, our entire recruitment process was now virtual. And it's the same thing here at Magna. There's not like the in-person interviewing that happens like it used to. It's all done virtually now. So I think there's a number of ways that helps. One, especially if there's work flexibility, you're not having to, from a bottom line standpoint, fly people around and do the whole song and dance and, the cost associated with that. But on the other piece of it is it's removing a lot of bias. I mean, there's weird, things out there that say the height of a person or the weight of a person, these things that like shouldn't impact you as an individual or professional at all, impact you. And when you're in a virtual meeting and all you see is someone's head, you can't judge somebody on any of those things. So a lot of those biases are now removed in the process, and it's setting that really great kind of even playing field for everybody.
We tax on to something else I'm thinking of too, which is a great point. One thing that is a challenge that I'm seeing changing that I think organizations are trying to figure out how to address is if you are somewhere or you're in an organization where there is remote or hybrid work, how does culture come into play? Because a lot of culture was formulated by being in the office with other people and in your wherever you work, how that still translates. I think it's an interesting challenge to see how you communicate your culture, because it's different. Who I knew when I worked in the office versus who has my new colleagues that have come in completely remote. I can only imagine it's a different experience. And how do you give them a similar experience? So I think it's a challenge for a lot of people, a lot of companies to figure out, and people. Yeah.
That makes sense. Heather, I know you said that you were like a big fan of working from home and you haven't missed it. I'm the same way. I started working from home during COVID, and I actually work remotely for a company out of St. Louis, and they were actually remote before I got here. I think of my team, no one is in the same state. We're all scattered all over the country, and everyone seems really cool with that. Have you done anything to like get to maintain or even create a new culture in this like virtual world?
It's interesting because that's where GM at least has gone with it, is you always had to be local or to a facility, even if like I could still work maybe remote or from home 1 or 2 days a week if I wanted to, depending on your boss. But we always had to be within commuting distance of an office, and it's different now. And I actually, most of my coworkers now don't live in Michigan. Most of them were here. Everybody was here. And now I think I had like 2 out of like 12 of us that are local anymore. So I think it's building at least what I'm seeing right now is building culture within your group, trying to make sure that they have the opportunity to experience it, virtually through any programs or learning opportunities they have remotely. But also, I think it's becoming our own responsibility as existing employees and people who are advocates of the brand and the organization to help bring that culture to them. So it's a challenge. We're still working on it. I feel like I'm still working on it.
Yeah, I think everyone is. It's crazy to look back and see how long ago it was, or how long it may feel that, when COVID kicked off in early 2020, it wasn't too long ago, and we're still trying to figure stuff out. And I know that's a big deal. We have one more question right here. Okay, so how do you recommend targeting profiles like an ideal candidate for a SVP or marketing position in an hourly employee in your distribution center? Will everyone different well, everyone different motivations, et cetera. How do you decide how to market, where to market to these different segments?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think that comes down to the different mechanisms that are there. So we were saying like LinkedIn's a great place to go from an executive search standpoint. And I know particularly at GM, in fact, when they were building out because of their centralized recruitment model, they actually had a couple people specially focused on executive recruiting. So they're looking and they're doing things like Boolean searches. They're using like LinkedIn Talent Insights to figure out where is this level of people? How do I target them? What's their average salary? Kind of figuring out that talent profile and then directly messaging them. Because how you handle an executive is incredibly different than how you're looking at a production worker. And a production worker, skilled trades, it's all about the money and it's about like, what's the shift? Where's the place I'm working? How much money can I make? So in a job ad for a production worker, you're going to see like $16.67 an hour starting ASAP, right? And like it's that directed towards them. And then, you know, in the middle, it's kind of a variation, but it's going to where that talent exists and it's using your own internal metrics as far as like, okay, where are we getting the biggest pull? And then working with those vendors like LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, who know their talent audiences better than anybody to say, okay, the bulk of the people that are visiting your profile. And I know, you know, at General Motors, when we were looking at, I think it was Glassdoor in particular,
Yep.
It was skilled trades, engineering, and IT were like the biggest categories of people that we were attracting.
Yep.
So then it's like, okay, then that's the kind of messaging I'm going to put here for this audience. On LinkedIn, it was more across the board and a lot more on the general experience and business side. So then it was targeting that message to them. And so that's kind of how you look at the different tools and the channels that you're using of how you would share those messages.
There you go. All right, it is 12:59, so I am going to call it. Jenny, Heather, thank you so much. I really appreciate the insight. Thanks everyone for joining. We'll go ahead and share this presentation with those who attended. And then also I know you guys had those videos too. So if you want to shoot those over, we can share those as well. But without further ado, I think we're all set. Thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, take care.
Have a good one.